Good morning. Welcome to the Civic Pulse with David Bonnier and Brian Brady. I am out in San Diego today in a hotel, and David is in. David, where are you exactly?
I'm in Southern Maryland, and we have a home in area called Port Republic, Maryland. It's by the bay, Chesapeake Bay. Yeah.
Oh, nice, nice. And we decided to do a show today because there was too many interesting and important stories happening in the past few days.
Yeah.
And we were both in the protest marches, me in San Diego and you in DC.
Right.
And I wanted to talk to you about resistance tactics, what works and what doesn't. But how was your protest yesterday in DC? What did you see?
Well, it was pretty spectacular. In fact, it exceeded all expectations. They were talking about 12,000 when they first started, and then they upped it up on Friday to 20,000, and now they're saying that they had 5 times that there. And if you were there, it felt like it was 100,000 people. It really did, because they were spread all over the grounds of the Washington Monument and all the way down the malls. So it was a lot of people, a lot of signs, a lot of energy, a lot of seriousness too. It was, these things can be carnival-ish in some ways, but
Yeah.
and fun, but they also can be very serious, and they had that both elements, which I think was good, because people saw that there were so many other people that cared about the same thing that they did. And the worst thing is to feel isolated and lonely, especially if you've lost your job or you think you're going to lose your job as a result of all of this and what Trump is doing, or you have a family member who might get deported.
Yeah.
This is a very stressful time for many, many people.
I was in San Diego for a conference, and I flew in. I was like, I'm going to go first to the protest and see what's happening there. And San Diego, as you know, is the county is pretty conservative. Actually, it's a military,
Yeah.
and so I was curious of what I'd see, and it was a massive turnout. It was a march that I would say was a few miles long. I don't know what they're estimating the numbers, but it looked like at least 50,000 people. And
Wow.
I was surprised emotionally how reassuring that felt, because it's an anxious time, and you're sitting there reading the paper alone or on your phone. And I think just seeing so many people are as upset as you.
Yeah.
I know there's a political reason to go out and protest, but I think there's also an emotional reason to get out and protest.
A big emotional reason, yeah. And it's good to do. Judy, my wife, and I, and then we had our children who were out there, and our grandchildren were there. They were different parts of this facility. We've marched with them before, the Women's March, let's see, in 2017. And when they had, I think, close to 1 million people. But we were all together in that march. We found each other and we stayed together. But this one, we're all over.
We spread out all over. Yeah, I was getting photos from Hood River, my sister, and New York City, and it seemed like everybody was showing up. Evanston. It was on social media, though. It was surprising that you also saw protests in red areas like Geneva, Illinois.
Sure, yeah.
Very big Trump country, and that kind of gets us. It gets us to our lead topic today, which is the Trump tariffs, right?
Yeah.
We're going to talk about resistance, but before we talk about resistance tactics, we got to talk a second about the tariffs. I mean, you, as somebody who fought against NAFTA, and you're not reflexively against tariffs to protect domestic jobs.
Right. I'm not.
What did you give me your thoughts on?
Well, I just think it's too much all at once, and it's discombobulated the whole world economy, and it is seen as too much retribution here, too much vengeance involved here. And I think that is another negative factor about what's happening. So we will undoubtedly see, as a result of all of this, because other countries aren't going to sit back and take it. I mean, they're going to respond as the Canadians have and the Europeans are now doing. And so it's going to be a increase in the consumer, and business people are going to pay for it. I mean, that's generally what happens in these things. Someone has to pay for it. And it's not going to be Trump. He never pays for anything. In fact, he's very good at stiffing his contractors, as we know. So so a lot of people are going to get hit economically. If you want to buy a new car, for instance, if we were thinking about a new car, we have a car that's 13 years old, and it's a good car, but it's getting up there. It's a couple 100,000 miles, so we're thinking of getting a new car. But the cost as a result of these tariffs is going to be anywhere between $4,000 and some people are saying as high as $12,000 new for a new car. That's the increase.
Yeah.
And so I think it's going to really hurt a lot of people, and people who have 529s for their kids and their grandkids' education have taken a huge hit. Just so many different pieces, pensions, IRAs, any savings you might have had that you've worked for.
Yeah, I've never been so happy to lose money though, David. In the stuff, I was like, yeah, I don't care if we can get rid of this guy.
Oh,
give me a couple of years. I'm also not retiring right away, so
yeah. So I think we gotta, we'll see what happens. But as you pointed out earlier today, if it hits somebody's pocketbook, they're more likely to be paying attention, and I think that's what's going on right now.
If you were tariff czar and could rewind the clock back to 1990 before NAFTA hit, I mean, we've had 90 years of free trade. It's pretty strange that you and I, all the Republican Party for years was the no tariff free, was the free trade party, was the fight Russia party. It's a completely upside down world now, right? They're now pro tariff. But if you were the tariff czar, what would be the sensible tariff that you would like to do?
Well, I really don't. I don't think I'm really qualified to give you an answer to that. Honestly, I really don't. The economics, macroeconomics, is a really specialized field, and I'm looking at it from the outside, and it's not something I feel capable or competent of speculating about. So, but I would be cautious. I think when you're talking about this amount of money for so many people and having the broad effect around the world, you've got to be smart and cautious about it. And I do not think the president is.
Yeah, Paul Krugman, who is more of a macroeconomic person, said, if you did a flat X percent to say 10% or 20%, he goes, the markets would adjust and they would just incorporate that. What Trump did was just all over the map, unpredictable, everything. And, China's 54%. That's going to knock a lot of folks out of business who get some of their goods from China. So there's just no rhyme or reason. What politically the advantage I see here is the one thing that Trump always holds up is it being a successful businessman, that he can manage the economy and steward it. I think this gets at, the old Karl Rove saying, attack people's strengths, and you can beat them, or so-called strengths, political strengths. This does give a window of opportunity for the Democrats to really to puncture the balloon on Trump's being good for the economy, which he never really showed in his first term. So it does seem to present probably the biggest political opportunity for the Democrats.
Well, we had an example of the electoral offshoot of all of this past week on Tuesday in Wisconsin and in Florida. And even though we lost those two heavily Republican seats in Florida, we cut the margins down in half from what they were. And in Wisconsin, we had a big victory, not only for the judge, the Supreme Court seat, but also for a couple of other races statewide that were significant. So, that's a good sign.
Yeah, I thought that Wisconsin Supreme Court victory was one of the more important elections, maybe the most
Yeah.
important election of this year, right?
Well, if it gets rid of Musk, yeah, because
And the
he's a big problem behind a lot of these problems that we're faced with today.
and the whole punditocracy thing, like, oh, the Democrats are flat on their back, they're not resisting, they're quiet, and now we finally have uh, the protests, we have the wind, and then we had Cory Booker, right?
Oh
What did
yes,
you
yeah.
think this week? What did you think of Cory Booker's 25-hour marathon? Have you ever talked for that long?
Well, actually, yeah, I've been that 25 hours, but I did a NAFTA thing, an overnight thing on the House floor. I led a group, Rosa and John Lewis and myself and Rosa DeLaura, a few others, Lloyd Doggett. This is back in 1993. And so I talked quite a long
You've
time.
talked a lot.
I mean, your bodily function needs are really important in all this whole process. So I'm glad Booker had people to come in and talk a little bit so he could use the bathroom.
My wife said you would last 90 minutes on a filibuster. That's about as long as you can go.
I think he'd beat me at my age. Yeah, it's not so easy. But I must say though that anytime people get up and talk and get the public's attention, and he did, it's a good thing. And he has a good message. So, I mean, the idea that he broke a record, well, it's not as so significant as what he's saying, but of course, what people in the news media latches onto, because it's the easiest hook to grab, is the length of time that he did. But the fact that he did, it keeps sending a message to other political people who are elected Democrats, who sit on their fannies and don't use their mouth, their brain. They don't do much. You can't get away. You should not be able to get away with that anymore. And so I'm glad that he stood up and set an example.
And waiting for Trump to mess up and then pouncing. I think you and I have talked about this. Like the Democrats need to build their own working class agenda,
Right.
and
Yeah.
promote that. They need to be resisting aggressively and building a working class agenda. And so I thought I had an argument though, and this gets to my main topic for today, which is what are resistance tactics, what you've seen that works and what doesn't. And my friend who's a community organizer and has won a lot of things in Chicago with his organization, really didn't like Booker's speech and thought it was kind of a flim-flammery.
Yeah. Well, he had a little bit of a reputation he has of, playing to the lights, but sometimes we need people to do that. So, and he's always willing to do it.
He's a very good speaker.
And he's
Here's
a good
my
speaker, and he cares about this stuff too. But
yeah, he's
so
genuine.
I don't mean to imply that he doesn't. I'm glad
He doesn't mind the mic. He doesn't mind the spotlight. I will say that.
Okay, let's say that.
I got many texts. I think he's moved up on the presidential sweepstakes from about 15 to about 3, or 2 or 3.
Yeah.
With that speech there, he got a lot of attention and money. I argued. There's 2 media arguments that I want to make to you that I believe in, but I wonder what you think of it. One is Trump's genius, and I hate to put those 2 words together, is dominating the news today, doing whatever it takes, and then kind of playing the media. If he's got a bad story come out, he'll do something crazy over here to pull the media attention away from Signalgate or what have you, right? Say, oh, we're going to next Greenland or whatever, just to change. So he controls the media narrative on a day-to-day basis, more in a more dominant way than any politician I've ever seen. And I don't think and so on Booker's credit, he controlled that news day, right? And so that
he did.
And I think in some ways we have to think that shallowly sometimes about how to control the news day, and organize on the airwaves a little bit.
So I was in favor of that tactic just for that simple reason.
Yeah.
Just like,
I think that's I think anybody who stands up today and marches, protests, gives speeches like he did, good for them. We need more of that. That's what this is about. This is a fight for the right of people to use their voices and use their feet when they have to. And we can't take those things for granted. And the fact that some leaders are doing it is good. There are different ways to do it too, of course. And I'm glad it's happening, by the way, in Geneva, Illinois.
yeah,
Because we need the people in red areas to know that we have allies that they're part of our coalition, and we consider them significant and important, and we want to hear what they have to say and what we can learn from them, because we're not doing so hot in getting back some of these red areas, and we have to really work at that. You and I have talked about that several times on the show, but and that's why I suggested it might not be a bad idea if we actually went out and did some of that stuff this year in those counties. And start with
yeah. Let's go to Macomb. Let's have a rally there, Dave.
Sure.
And
Bernie came to Macomb County. For those who don't know, Macomb County is about a little less than 1 million. It's maybe close to 900,000 residents. It's the third largest county in Michigan, and it had a history of, when I was in office, of being a Democratic stronghold, but working class, conservative on social issues, but not so much on economic, really progressive. And it's flipped because they got a little disappointed. They got a lot disappointed. But the fact that the Democrats didn't deliver on issues like trade, for instance. And so they left. They got, they were seeing their jobs. The whole industrial Middle West was evaporating economically. They were seeing their jobs go, and they said, well, let's try something else. These guys aren't paying attention.
And they also had They had Fox News in their they had Fox News in their ear as well, right?
Yeah, sure.
So, helping guide them to the other party.
Right.
Talk about state media. While the stock market was dropping this week, they took the ticker off of Fox News, and they never brought up the stock market falling. Right? Imagine if Obama had slapped these tariffs on, and the market had crashed. There have been fire coming out of Fox News hosts' mouth and ears. It would have been crazy.
So they took the following the meter right off of the air that they always showed, huh?
Yeah, that they always show. There's no longer the stock ticker as long as it's falling under Trump. What do you think, if you look back on your protest movements you've been involved with? Give me 3 or 4 that you think were effective tactics, because you can walk on the streets, you can do media protests like Booker, but either inside or outside of Congress, because you've done both.
Well, inside Congress, when the Gingrich folks took over Gingrich and his troops took over after the 94 election in 1995. It was the first time we had been out of power in the House for 40 years. For 40 years, we controlled the House. So, we had ideas we wanted to express, and they wouldn't give us anything. They wouldn't give us any hearings on our bills. They wouldn't have any markups on our legislation, nothing. They locked us out. So we had to figure out a way to get around that. And some people came together and decided, well, we'll go out and why don't we just do it on the lawn of the U.S. Capitol? If we can't use the hearing rooms, we'll just get some tables and do it out on the lawn. So we did. We got some, card tables, that you have at home, and long tables. We put them out on the lawn, and we put some chairs out there, and some people sat, and then we had people come and testify, and we had hearings on bills that were significant and meant something to us. So
right on the Capitol grounds, or
right on the Capitol grounds. And of course, we had a lot of media. And of course, a lot of the visitors were interested in what was going on. There's probably more people watched us than what was happening inside. and it was getting filmed and everything. So we had a lot of attention on that.
There's a name for those guerrilla hearings. What do they call them now? I read that this week because they're talking.
I don't know.
I don't know. Guerrilla hearings pretty not bad.
Yeah. So anyway, so that worked out reasonably well. And then I've done all night sessions inside, as I told you just now. We did it on trade, but we've done it on some other issues as well, where we stayed in all night. We didn't go out, and we stayed right into the morning. We had shifts. We protested and made our points that way. And then
after Gingrich for a couple of years, almost solo, what were some of the tactics you went after Gingrich with?
Well, I'd have to think about that for a while, but
now some you can't say on air.
we wanted to expose some of his hypocrisy, so that was primarily our main concern, and we did, and he was playing on the line in terms of ethical, non-ethical. And he would go over the line because he was playing on the line constantly. And he crossed it many times. And so we caught him on a number of violations, in which he was fined by the ethics committee and reprimanded. And so ended up leaving right after that.
You look in the paper, you open it up, and you just see so many unethical, maybe unlawful actions being taken. The DOJ lawyer who just truthfully answered that they mistakenly sent a guy to El Salvador gets laid off for that, right? And just many things like that you could hold. That'd be wonderful to hold hearings on and actually investigate. So it seems like your strategy is really needed here. I suspect they're thinking of it.
Yeah, I mean, some of the staff people who were part of all of that, organizing that, are still there working for Jeffries. Mm-hmm.
I think I've heard some rumblings that they're going to do this. So I hope they do. How about outside of Congress? What are some tactics you've seen work?
Well, after for instance, I talked about this last week as well, so forgive me. But after the NAFTA thing passed, we wanted to see how it would work. So I asked Bernie Sanders, who was very active against it with me, and John Lewis and Rosa DeLaura and some others to participate in going around on a bus tour. So we went to the industrial Midwest, we went to the Northeast, we took a bus trip down through the South, we went out to the West along the Mexican border, and then in California, in Tijuana, and then the sweatshops in LA, and then up to the Central Valley to look at the agricultural aspects of NAFTA. So we got a lot of attention on that. We did that for over a period of about 3 weeks.
I also remember when you were in Congress and helping lead the resistance against Reagan's illegal wars in Central America. You worked very closely with the organizations that were organizing across the country. So it was an inside-outside game strategy.
It really was. I was the chief deputy whip when I started, and the whip after we kind of winded it down. But I had a whip office, and we organized a lot of our organization would meet in my chief deputy whip's office and talk about, how do we get the attention we needed to get. And we would do strategy meetings as well on Central America and how best to go about it. Because we were always having votes. Every 6 months we had a vote on the Contra War. And it was always close. It was always within 10 votes out of 435. So it was a constant battle for almost 10 years of talking to members, Republicans and Democrats, to get the coalition we needed to either end the war, bring it down, stop the money flow, whatever it was that was doable at that particular moment in that 10-year period that would move us in the direction of ending the wars.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, but I just remember really thinking that the inside outside games were working really well together. There, you had those local solidarity movements.
You had to have a good outside game on when you were trying to do what we had to do, and that was keep this coalition together for like 10 years. So we needed pressure on members of Congress from the outside. So we worked with groups to create that. And, to visit with their members, talk to their members, do all the things that you need to do to get your member of Congress or your senator to be responsive to your concerns.
Yeah. And I look at the wars in Gaza and Ukraine as an example where that Central American strategy maybe could work, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of good groups that are out there on Ukraine now. In fact, yesterday on the mall at the Washington Monument, where we had so many people, tens of thousands of people, a lot of Ukrainian flags, a lot of Ukrainian signs. So there, it's penetrated the consciousness of the country on how significant Ukraine is for a variety of reasons. I saw one shirt. God, I have it on my phone here. If I can bring it, I'll show it to you because I thought it was really kind of cool. And the
signs were fabulous.
Signs of these events are always good.
I love the creativity. One sign, what was it? It's bad when the introverts are out here marching.
Here, I'm going to find it for you in just a second because it's worth waiting for, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So this one says, "Be brave like Ukraine."
I like that. I like that.
Yeah, I like that one too.
Yeah. The humor and the tone wise, this one last thing on resistance. Well, two things. One is, I feel like the guy in Congress who has the most natural inside outside game and really has never lost his footing in this whole thing is Bernie. And because he has an outside infrastructure, right?
He does. He has a good one that Larry runs, Larry Cohen.
Yeah.
And our revolution.
And so that feeds really nicely into his work in Congress.
It does. Yeah.
And you see these others.
He gets others. He's got, he does weekly. He has a weekly show where he brings a guest on, and it's a webinar, I think. I can't remember exactly what they're called now, but anyway, it gets out to anybody who wants to watch it. And they're interesting. Yeah.
I predict Bernie might anoint the next Democratic nominee. His endorsement might be the most important in this process. We'll see. But people are saying AOC might run, which would be a plot twist for us. I'm for everybody running. Let's have a bunch of people run, and just whoever wins. On the tone, there's also a debate about a comedian got a lot of attention, and the Washington Post wrote this up this morning. The tone, the comedian was suggested the Mean Girl liberals, that movie Mean Girls, that they need to come out for the Democrats and start, ruthlessly making fun, and not just criticizing the policies, really, using mean language to bully these folks off the stage. And then others like David Axelrod in this article said, tough and mean are two different things.
Yeah.
And we really want to be tough and not be
mean is not what you want to do.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting. Once in a while, getting a little tough can be mean when you're really upset, but I don't think that's our brand.
No, and you saw it. I saw it at the rallies yesterday too. I mean, you'd walk by certain areas and they'd have these obscene words to try to get attention against Trump, and that's not going to do it.
Yeah.
Or using someone who's using the word hate. That's not going to do it. Hate is not what we should be about here.
Tough love. That's what we're about.
Sure. Tough love is fine.
Yes. And it just makes me think of Elon Musk's comment that empathy is the downfall of Western civilization. And I was like, if
That's
you believe
funny.
that,
Yeah.
I think we are the party, hopefully, of empathy. Let's end on empathy for subjugated folks that you and I both, feel for, which is, I think you're writing a piece about the 15 medics who were killed in Gaza by the Israeli army. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, it was near Rafah in the area, the last part where they wiped out the people of Gaza. Unfortunately, the Israelis took a lot of women and children, and with innocent women and children with them in all of this. 50,000 people were killed, most of them innocent, most of them women and children. So anyway, they're clear. The Israeli army is still, and Netanyahu is still clearing out areas they think where there are Hamas fighters and leaders, but they're being, as they always have been, indiscriminate. And so at this one area where there was some action, the Red Crescent, which is like the Red Cross, and the Red Cross came in. It's all regulated by international law. They come in with certain clothing on and crosses and lights blaring to let them know that they're trying to rescue someone who's in serious health problems or who's dying or whatever it is. And if you're the combatants, you're not supposed to shoot. You're not supposed to take them on. Well, it gets violated, unfortunately, too often. And the Israeli Defense Forces said that they looked suspicious, that they didn't have their lights on, they didn't have this. Well, they did have their lights on. We know that because one of the people who was killed had his iPhone on, and they have a recording of it. And then they tried to cover it up. The Israelis did, by burying these people, medics,
in a massacre,
in a grave, including their vehicles. I mean, it was horrific. My father was a medic, and he worked with the hospital battalion during the Second World War and followed the troops in from England. So he worked throughout France and Germany as they went to take back these countries. And so I'm very sensitive on how people, first responders, are treated, and in military or non-military, and they were just shot like the worst. So, and it's a war crime. It's a war crime, and they ought to be held accountable for it. Those who perpetrated it and did it, and certainly Netanyahu should be held accountable for what he has done now for the last several years. More than several years in Palestine.
Decades for him,
Decades for him. But he tried to. He's under indictment by the International Criminal Court of Justice and for his activities, what they have done, indiscriminately bombing and killing of people, as well as the fact that inhibiting food from getting into Gaza to feed people who are starved. And he can't go anywhere because he'll get arrested. He goes to so he goes to places where he's friend. They like him. Like Trump is going to have him here in this week. I think he's coming to the U.S. And he went to see Orban in Hungary. But other than that, he's been restricted, which is. I hope they get him. I hope he goes before the court, and I hope he's tried.
I think what we're going to see play out over the next couple decades is, I think I'm a good example. Like I usually kept my mouth shut on Israeli Palestinian issues because I felt like I wasn't well versed enough in it, and there's so much blood on everybody's hands, and wading into it I didn't feel qualified. But now the slaughter is so over the top and incredible that even people like me who are afraid to like weigh in have now become pretty staunchly anti-Netanyahu at the very least, but
Right.
also just really starting to examine like, oh, this has been going on a long time.
Right.
And I think they've lost, you even see it on the right wing too. There's some right wing commentators. I think they've lost more support internationally in America than they perhaps realize.
And this
deservedly.
American Israeli Political Action Committee, AIPAC, is another one who's been at this now for decades, indiscriminately. And I have no respect at all for them. Never have, even when I was in Congress. And they didn't like me, but that was tough bananas.
And there's a good alternative out there now, J Street, right? Do you support those guys? They're trying to position themselves.
They're the alternative, one of the alternatives in the Jewish community, and a good one.
Yeah,
because there are really great people in the Jewish community and do really super things and don't approve of what Netanyahu is doing or what the Israeli government has been doing for a long time now.
One last note is we'll flip to Ukraine, as Ukraine is getting horribly attacked, and there's a devastating attack where a lot of young teenagers were killed, and Zelensky's hometown where he grew up. I can't pronounce it. It's like Kryvyi, or I think.
Yeah, you get close. Yeah, I can't either. it's one of the easier names actually to pronounce, but in Ukraine, but I can't pronounce it. But it's along the water there, and it goes.
I saw one sign of hope though on that your old nemesis Newt Gingrich in today's I think social media criticized Trump, his dear leader, on this, saying that that he's been giving the green light to Putin, and that's causing these stepped up attacks, and we got to stop doing that. But I thought that was an interesting split. Trump didn't say anything. Obviously, Rubio and everyone's kept their mouth shut, even though there's been these horrible.
Well, actually, Trump has spoken out against Putin in the last few days now. So maybe
that's true.
Maybe Gingrich was trying to jump on out and knew it was gonna happen and take credit for it. But
nudge.
But we'll see what happens. But
yeah,
it's a tragedy. All these lives lost. The Russians have lost like
a couple 100,000,
700,000 casualties in this war. Now, I think I don't remember what number have been killed out of that. If it's been 100 or 170,000, something like that. But still, and then the others maimed, injured. But it's just horrific. It's got to stop. It's the worst kind of warfare. It's trench warfare. They got a long line, and you're in the world's worst conditions, and it'll drive you nuts. Because, as and I know, because we go there, we go to Ukraine, and we're part of trying to help out there. You're not safe because of the drones. The drones are always around. And if they see you, they report, and incoming comes in, and you're gone. So it's just the worst condition to be fighting in.
It is. So what's your act of resistance this week before we cut off? Do you have any plans? You're writing a couple pieces we're going to get out.
Well, I'm going to do, I've done a piece. Now, I just finished it this morning on the title of it is called Trauma. And it takes off after the words of the Congressional Budget Office guy, Vaught, and said he wants to bring trauma on all these workers. He doesn't even want them to come to work. He calls them the bureaucrats. Well, they're people who service your Social Security. They're the people who service your Medicare, your veterans benefits. These are the people he's talking about. He wants to cause them trauma. So I talk about Trump's attack on U.S. workers. That's the title of my piece. And that'll be probably published next week. And then another one I'm working on right now is what we just finished talking about, and that is the shame, I call it, on what's happened with respect to human rights and Palestinian people, what they did in Gaza, and especially with this last incidents of going after people who are first responders and medics.
Yeah. Vought is somebody everybody should know. He's the brains behind this dismantling of government.
Yeah, he was the guy who was put this whole together.
Yeah. Ezra Klein's kind of been on fire doing some good podcasts. He has a good one out for folks to listen to on Vought's on Vought and Doge and what they're
about.
What they're about. I think it's pretty tight.
Project 225. It escaped me for a second. He's the guy who created the economics on that.
Well, next week let's talk about Project 2029. Let's bring on a guest who can help us build the Democratic 2029 project.
All right.
But it's been great to talk, David. And
it's good to see you, and always anywhere you are. And let's keep plugging away. And everybody out there who's listening, thanks for always listening and coming together with us. And we'll have some more interesting guests. We're gonna have a couple women students from Ukraine who are students at universities there, and I'm going to get a couple of combatants, fighters, so you can see what their perspective is. So those will be good shows. And then of course Brian always has great guests that he suggests. So
and suggest some. Send us a note. Suggest.
Okay.
So, all right. Take care. Enjoy your Sunday.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.